All right, so let's talk about cellular respiration. This is the process that happens within the mitochondria that converts the stored chemical energy in the bonds of glucose into whatever energy the plant or animal needs. All right, this is why the powerhouse of the cell is called the mitochondria. It's because the mitochondria can do respiration. So, before we really dive into it, we need to reflect for 10 seconds on what happens and what is produced in photosynthesis because these two processes are so closely related. We got to build off that. So, first, a photosynthesis recap. I promise this will be quick. It all starts with energy from the sun and these raw ingredients, the H2O, water, and the CO2, carbon dioxide. So these two things go into the plant or algae or fungi or whatever it is that can do photosynthesis. It goes into the plant cells and it finds the chloroplast. That's this organelle right here. It finds the chloroplast and it uses the energy from the sun. The chloroplast does it. The chloroplast uses the energy from the sun and it breaks apart these molecules and combines them into new molecules. Okay? The C6H12O6, also known as glucose, even more commonly known as a simple sugar. Okay? So we also have this byproduct, oxygen. This is a waste product of the chloroplast. It has no need for oxygen in the chloroplast. But these ingredients are used elsewhere. I mean, have you ever thought of what now? What do these ingredients even do? And if this is always happening, why isn't the atmosphere just chucked full of like 100% oxygen if the carbon dioxide is getting turned into it? And what happens, like what's the next step for this sugar molecule? That's where cellular respiration comes in. So remember these products, the sugar and the oxygen, because they're going to come in right here with our next step. So the plants have both a chloroplast and a mitochondria because the photosynthesis job, the chloroplast's job, is simply to make the sugar. But this molecule is just storing the energy. We need to break this molecule apart to release the energy at the right time, whenever the plant needs it. So these products probably look familiar, right? This is what came from photosynthesis. And guess what the mitochondria needs? It needs two things: our sugar molecule, the C6H12O6, and oxygen. So the mitochondria uses these ingredients, breaks the sugar molecule apart, uses the energy that it gets from that stored chemical energy in the sugar, and it spits out the things it doesn't need, which is water, H2O, and carbon dioxide. So if you're a plant, you get your sugar, your C6H12O6, from yourself. You've made it already, right? You got that from the chloroplast. If you're an animal, you get your glucose from the food you eat, and you get the oxygen from the air you breathe. Okay, this should make good sense. You're taking the ingredients of the photosynthesis, you give them to the mitochondria, and it spits out these products, the water and the carbon dioxide. And these products just happen to be exactly what a plant needs, what the chloroplast needs. So we have a loop here, all right? You start with energy from the sun, it goes into the chloroplast. The chloroplast takes CO2 and water, and it uses those, spits out oxygen and glucose. That oxygen and glucose enter into the mitochondria, which then spits out chemical energy, right? The thing that we need. You and I can walk around and move because we're breaking the bonds of this glucose and we're harnessing the chemical energy that came from it. Anyway, the mitochondria takes these ingredients, uses them, gets the energy from them, and spits out the things it doesn't need, water and CO2, which then another chloroplast somewhere can use, which then another mitochondria somewhere can use, and it's an endless cycle, okay? Notice how these materials are getting reused over and over and over. You and I are part of this cycle. We're down here on the mitochondria side. We accept the oxygen and the glucose from the plants, and we give them back what they need. But plants have been around a lot longer than you and I. So are they self-sufficient, or do they need us as much as we need them? If you remember, plants have both a chloroplast and a mitochondria, so they do both processes. Plants can survive without us just fine because they produce in their mitochondria water and CO2. And in their chloroplasts, they produce oxygen and glucose. So plants can be self-sufficient as long as they have a water source, right? As long as it's raining, and as long as there's an atmosphere to pull from, they can do just fine on their own. Humans, on the other hand, we do not have our chloroplasts. We do not have chloroplasts. We just have mitochondria. So we're kind of in debt to algae and plants and really anything that does photosynthesis, because it gives us the things we can't make on our own, the oxygen and the glucose. So this is crucial here. Matter cycles around the system, right? You're using the same molecules going around and around and around, not necessarily within the same plant cell all day long, but within the system of our Earth. Okay, the matter is being exchanged between plants and animals and plants and animals and plants and animals constantly, and has for millions and millions and millions of years. Energy flows through the system. So it starts as light energy from the sun. These little factories here, the chloroplast and mitochondria, they can turn it into usable chemical energy found in the bonds of sugar. And then we can use that chemical energy to do things like, for you and I, produce body heat and walk around, right? Thermal energy and kinetic energy. So the energy is flowing through the system and being converted from one type to another. Whereas back here, the matter is being cycled through. It's being reused over and over and over. You might see these equations written like this. This is literally just a screenshot from Google, because it's like one of the most common ways you'd see this equation written. Photosynthesis, you start with 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, you add 6 molecules of water, and then this process is the process of photosynthesis. It needs light energy, and you get C6H12O6 and 6 oxygen molecules. Respiration, same thing, except for reversed. You start with C6H12O6 and oxygen, and you end with CO2 and water. You should notice that these are reverses of each other, right? You might also see it drawn this way. This is kind of a cool way because it's like the arrows, like if you just follow this green arrow, it's saying in photosynthesis, you start with these ingredients, they turn into these ingredients. But if you want to do respiration, you just start over here on the right, you follow the blue arrow back, and you get these things on the left. With photosynthesis, you are receiving solar energy. With cellular respiration, you are using the chemical energy. So that's another way you could see it written. And last but not least, this is another way you could see it written. With photosynthesis, you start with your carbon dioxide, your water, and you add energy. Remember, that's just light energy. And you get glucose and oxygen. And then I've been calling it cellular respiration. That's one name for it. Another name for it is aerobic respiration, because you need air, right? Aerobic respiration. So in this case, you are starting with the sugar and the oxygen, and then you end up with the carbon dioxide, the water, and the chemical energy on its way out. So we got energy in over here, energy out over here, but it's the same energy that's just been transformed. That's another way you might see it. Okay, these two chemical processes keep life going. And if you're a plant, you can do both of them, which is pretty awesome. If you're an animal, you can only do aerobic respiration or cellular respiration, whatever you want to call it, and you rely on the plants to do this half of the work. Okay, I hope that helped. As always, please ask me if you got questions. Make sure you're understanding not just the definitions here, not just the vocabulary words, but you're understanding the process and why it happens, what materials are being used. And that's all I've got for you. Hope this helped.